Don't say anything since corporate is coming for an inspection. You understand? Don't say anything foolish. In any case, you don't have the courage to. Johnson, the branch manager, was ensuring that his subordinate remained in line until the very end. He may have been concerned that his subordinates could say something needless to the inspectors, despite the harshness of his statements. I mentally answered to Johnson, "You're already in the middle of an inspection." Since Johnson's face would soon grow pale, I must admit that looking at his profile made me giggle. I couldn't suppress my excitement. "Just so you know, today is the last day of your reign. Your life is going to take a nosedive from today on," I said, loud enough for Johnson to hear, or not. "I'm going to enjoy myself a little today. The drama of retaliation has begun. Joseph Jones is my name. I work for a company that manufactures medical gadgets, and this year I turned 44. My business is a significant participant, vying for the nation's largest market share. I've worked for this company for 10 years, by the way. I worked in a totally different field before. There was a small print business in town where I used to work. It was a little company, nothing like the one I work for now. I was raised by a single mom, and due to our financial situation, I began working as soon as I graduated from high school. I was informed that I have no recollection of my father because he passed away when I was quite little. Despite working 3 part-time jobs for me, my mother was unable to pay for my college education. I could have taken out a loan to attend college, but I was hesitant and decided to obtain a job instead because I wanted to ease my mom's burden a little. I assumed I would work at that print business for the rest of my life since I had no more schooling or contacts. But there are always surprises in life. My life drastically changed when I was 34. I received an invitation to join my current firm. I will discuss the specifics later. Being hired by a large corporation was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for a recent high school graduate who was employed at a tiny business. Naturally, I agreed without question. However, the work was completely different from my expectations. In the 10 years since I joined, I can honestly state that I have seldom had a minute of relaxation. Nevertheless, since I was hired by such a large organization as a high school graduate, I felt I shouldn't be complaining about my job and gave it my best effort. I can only speculate as to how much work the other employees were doing, but I can state with confidence that, out of the more than 5,000 people working for this organization, I did the most work. Maybe the employer has noticed my efforts over the last 10 years because I was just informed about a transfer the other day. I was moved to the Houston branch when I was 44. Many of the moved employees are so at ease in the Houston branch's relaxed corporate culture that they have no desire to shift to other branches. Its distinct culture is most likely a result of its distance from the New York headquarters. There are no issues with shopping or anything else because the city is respectable and the food is excellent. For someone like me, who puts in more effort than everyone else, I assumed this was a prize transfer, a way of saying, enjoy Texas. However, I soon realized my mistake. Steve Johnston was the branch manager in Houston on my first day. He has only worked at the Houston branch for 2 years and is 2 years older than me at 46. He was formerly a section manager in Headquarters General Affairs Division. To put it briefly, Johnson is a genuinely disagreeable man who seems to take pleasure in putting others down. He gets very upset and chastises people for more than an hour when they make a mistake. How can you work here without feeling ashamed after making such a minor error? Is your salary being stolen by a thief? How about you give up by tomorrow? That was how he would continue to nag. Everybody makes mistakes from time to time. Johnson seems to have nothing better to do than point out even the smallest errors and shame others for them, regardless of his opinion. I was shocked to hear from someone at headquarters that they never wanted to leave the Houston branch because it was such a comfortable place to work. I was eager to return to headquarters by the first day. Apparently, though, this was the situation before to Johnson's arrival. The environment at the Houston branch has apparently deteriorated since he arrived. I couldn't believe someone like him had been promoted to branch manager, but apparently, Johnson is the nephew of an executive. Everyone said he got in through connections and was promoted solely because of nepotism. Seeing him in person, it all made sense. It was pure nepotism. However, because of his difficult personality, he was transferred to a branch far from headquarters. The top brass at headquarters probably wanted to keep Johnson out of sight because he was so hard to deal with. From the perspective of the Houston branch staff, it was a huge inconvenience, but it showed how much trouble he was for the higher-ups. As someone who loves to look down on others, Johnson found me, a high school graduate, to be an easy target. From my first day, he asserted his dominance and insulted me relentlessly. "So you're Joseph, the guy starting today." I looked at your background. Just a high school grad and a mid-career hire too. I'm shocked our company would hire someone so obviously dumb. Sure, I was a high school grad and a mid-career hire, but this was the first time anyone had ever made an issue out of it. In my experience, people are typically judged by their current performance, not their past. Digging up the past serves no purpose and has no benefits. You're right, branch manager, but is there a problem with that? I quickly shot back. I regretted it, but I had just spoken my mind, and it was more of a question than a rebuttal. So, I thought it would be okay. However, branch manager Johnson seemed very offended that a subordinate would argue with him, and he got angry. You seem to be mistaken. But in a company, the boss's word is absolute, especially for someone like you with just a high school diploma. All you need to do is say yes to everything I say. What nonsense. Does Johnson even know what era we're living in? However, he seemed to genuinely believe what he was saying, and when I tried to argue, he intimidated me with a glare. I thought that if I said anything more, I'd get scolded 10 times worse, so I stayed silent. It seems you finally understand. High school grads are really slow to get it. By the way, what's with your hairstyle? Get it cut short by tomorrow. Johnson seemed satisfied after venting and returned to his seat. But what was with the comment about my hairstyle? My hair isn't that long, and this was the first time in my life anyone had pointed it out. Just to be sure, I asked my colleague at the next desk what they thought of my hair. There's absolutely nothing wrong with it. He probably just wanted to complain. He always adds an extra complaint at the end. He probably forgot he even said it, so just ignore it. It seemed Johnston likes to nitpick other employees too. I initially planned to get a haircut after work to avoid further comments, but my colleague's words made me forget about it. Even though I didn't change my hairstyle at all, Johnson never mentioned it again. Clearly, he was just nitpicking whatever caught his eye. What a petty person. Since then, Johnson has kept picking on me with trivial complaints every time we talk. What's with that pale face? You look like a sick person. It lowers the morale of the team. Why don't you quit and stop being a burden to your colleagues? No one else thought I looked sick, so this was just another one of Johnson's baseless accusations. This happened almost every day. If I tried to avoid him, he'd come over and spew insults anyway. He only returned to his seat once he felt satisfied. But I really wished he wouldn't bother me every day. I wondered if he had nothing better to do. Since I came to the Houston branch, I haven't been able to do any meaningful work because of Johnson's orders. Originally, I was supposed to work on reducing unnecessary expenses for the Houston branch, but that was completely out of the question. A high school graduate handling cost reduction? I can't allow such a pointless task. You'd just do a sloppy job anyway. Stick to menial tasks. He'd assigned me to trivial duties like collecting trash, making copies, and serving tea. I was even made to run personal errands for Johnson. Go get me coffee from the corner shop. Oh, and we're out of toilet paper at home, so maybe the supermarket is better. Not that it matters if you're not here, but I'll probably have more menial tasks for you, so hurry back. At this point, I was essentially Johnson's servant. My manager and colleagues thought it was a problem and spoke up to Johnson, but he wouldn't listen. When they persisted, Johnson got angry and verbally abused them too, defending a high school grad with no education. I'll see you at his level. If you want to join him in menial tasks, be my guest. This was pure intimidation, but Johnson believed he could do whatever he wanted at the Houston branch without consequences. The manager got angry at his tyranny, but I couldn't let this cause more trouble for everyone, so I calmed them down. The toxic atmosphere at the Houston branch was entirely Johnson's fault. The other employees were not only supportive, but also angry on my behalf. I was moved to the point of tears by their warmth. I appreciate your support, but if you defend me further, it might cause problems for you too. I'll handle this on my own, so please just watch over me. I have some ideas on how to deal with him. Are you sure? What kind of ideas? I can't say now, but I won't let him do as he pleases. I'll make him regret underestimating me. When I said this with confidence, the manager was convinced. Seeing your face, it looks like you're fine, but don't push yourself too hard. If you need help, don't hesitate to ask. The manager was considerate even to me, a new employee at the Houston branch. I felt I shouldn't worry someone like that, so I firmly resolved to handle things on my own. Of course, I was confident I could manage it. However, I needed to do some research, and timing was crucial, so I decided to stay quiet and wait for the right moment. Several months passed since I was assigned to the Houston branch. I was still doing menial tasks. Branch manager Johnson always interfered whenever I tried to do other work. Doing these trivial tasks made me wonder if I really was incompetent. This was likely Johnson's method. He would push those he disliked to the edge, forcing them to quit on their own. However, I would never quit voluntarily. That would be exactly what Johnson wanted. Besides, I couldn't leave until I made him regret underestimating me. While I was thinking this, branch manager Johnson called me in. Since I had no urgent tasks, I went right away. Johnson started saying something outrageous. In 2 weeks, HQ is coming for an inspection. You came here to cut costs, right? If you tell the inspectors that the Houston branch's accounts are fine, it'll be convincing. So, put together some adjusted accounting data and compile it into a report. Are you saying we should show falsified data to the inspectors? What if we get caught? Besides, I've only been doing menial tasks and have never even seen the real data. I can't make a report. Technically, I was sent by HQ to review the Houston branch's accounting data as part of my job. However, Johnson had always refused to show me any of this data. Shut up. If the lie gets exposed, we'll just say you did it on your own. I'll let you see the data. Johnson then called the accounting staff and instructed them to show me the data. Just show him the bare minimum needed to create the report. As long as he has the monthly balance sheet, he can make something up. Don't show this low-level high school grad any detailed data. He wouldn't understand it anyway. This was complete nonsense. I couldn't understand why I would be blamed if the fraud was discovered. Creating a report with minimal data was outright fabrication, not just falsification. I was speechless at Johnson's outrageous command. Seeing my reaction, Johnson seemed to think I had no objections and smiled with satisfaction. All right. I have a meeting, so you can get this done in a week, right? It's just made-up data anyway. Even if it's fabricated data, making a report that won't raise any suspicion from the inspectors requires thorough scrutiny. There's no way I can create a foolproof report in just a week, I thought. However, I decided to agree. Understood. I'll have it ready in a week. That's a good response for a high school grad. Well, get to it. As I watched Johnson leave the room, I muttered to myself, finally, the time has come to make you eat your words. In 2 weeks, you'll be in hell. My voice was a bit louder than intended, and Johnson turned around, but he didn't seem to catch what I said. Did you say something? Probably something stupid. If you're talking to yourself, it's a sign you're losing it. Go see a doctor. It's quite something that he can throw out insults without even hearing what I said. There's no need to pity someone like him. I felt no guilt about dragging him to hell. I immediately began working on the report. However, I didn't just create the fake report Johnson wanted. I decided to make 2 sets of reports. One set contained the fabricated numbers that Johnson requested, and the other set had the accurate data. I already knew what I was going to do with these reports. To do this properly, I needed to verify the correct data. I asked the accounting staff if they could show me the accurate expense data for the Huan branch. But if the branch manager finds out, who knows what he'll do to me? I can't. Are you going to keep obeying him forever? If we get caught, I'll take all the blame. Besides, it actually won't be a problem even if he finds out. I whispered to the accounting staff about what I was planning to do. Really? But if you do that, Johnson will hate you, and who knows what he'll do. When I whispered again, the accounting staff was shocked but promised to help me. Immediately, I could create an accurate report. Johnson's trip to hell was certain. 2 weeks passed. Today was the day HQ was coming for the inspection. Of course, I had already submitted the fabricated report to Johnson. Johnson planned to hand the falsified report to the inspectors without batting an eye. Everyone, HQ is coming for an inspection, so keep your mouths shut. Don't say anything stupid, got it? Not that you have the guts to anyway. Even at the last moment, Johnson was warning his subordinates to stay quiet. We're already in the middle of an inspection. I silently retorted to Johnson in my mind. Honestly, seeing Johnson's profile made me want to laugh, thinking about how his face would soon turn pale. I couldn't help but feel excited. Just so you know, your reign ends today. From today on, your life will plummet. I muttered this just loud enough that Johnson might hear, or might not. Today, I'm going to have a bit of fun myself. The revenge drama begins now. Nice to meet you. I'm Richard, the leader of the inspection team. Let's get started. First, we'd like to check the Houston branch's accounting for the past year. Do you have the reports? As Richard said this, Johnson handed over the report. We'll read through the report, so please lend us a conference room. Make sure no one enters while we're checking. With that, the inspection team entered the conference room. Johnson felt relieved after handing over the fabricated report. I decided to act. At that moment, I headed toward the conference room. Of course, Johnson, worried about the inspection, was glancing at the conference room and quickly noticed my move. Immediately coming over, he asked, "Hey, what are you doing? You're going to disturb the inspectors. Didn't they say no one should enter?" "Yeah, they did, but I forgot to give them an important document. I'll just hand it over. Don't worry, I won't say anything stupid." I smirked at Johnson, which made him furious. He didn't like seeing the usual target of his ridicule looking confident. This reaction was part of my plan, and his outburst only made me grin wider. Seeing this, Johnson got even angrier. "You're a load-educated fool. Stay away from the inspectors. Go sit somewhere far away, or better yet, go home. Just keep your mouth shut. I promised I won't say anything, but if they're missing a document, it would be troublesome for them. I'll just give it to them." Johnson hated the idea of me, the person who made the fake report, getting close to the inspectors. He was worried I might reveal the truth. In that case, I'll give it to them. You stay away. If you say something stupid, it'll cause problems. As we argued, it seemed our voices were heard inside the conference room, and Richard came out. Naturally, since we were raising our voices right in front of the door. "What's going on? If you need to talk, could you do it somewhere else?" Richard glared at us as he said this. I'm sorry, but he was trying to do something strange, so I was warning him. As the branch manager, we'll move right away. Please continue reviewing the materials. Johnson tried to appease Richard with polite words. However, I took the opportunity to silently hand over the additional documents to Richard. Having heard our conversation, Richard thanked me and accepted the documents. Thank you. So you forgot to hand these over earlier. We'll add these to our review. Richard began flipping through the additional documents I handed over, but then suddenly stopped. I see, he understood. With that, Richard returned to the conference room. You didn't give them any strange documents, did you? If you did something stupid, it'll be a big problem. I didn't give them anything strange. I kept quiet, just as you wanted. With those additional documents, I think they'll finish the review quickly. 10 minutes after I said that, the conference room door opened, and Richard and the others came out. Richard addressed Branch Manager Johnson. We finished reviewing the documents. After contacting the CEO, he wants to discuss these materials with you, so we'd like you to come to HQ with us today. Can you come with us when we leave today? That's quite sudden. Can't it be tomorrow? Being called to HQ immediately after reading the documents was unprecedented, so Johnson was understandably shocked. No, since we're here, let's go together. We don't have any questions about the documents, but the CEO wants more details. Thank you. The words were polite, but the tone left no room for refusal. Realizing this was serious, Johnson approached me with a furious look. You must have included something strange in those additional documents. There's no way they finished the review so quickly. You definitely. As Johnson started complaining to me, Richard interrupted. We're leaving right away, so let's go. Johnson couldn't keep complaining in front of the inspection team, so he reluctantly started preparing to leave. However, he suddenly had an idea and made a proposal to Richard. The person who created these documents is my subordinate Joseph, who handed you the additional papers. It would be smoother if he came along to explain. Hey, you're not busy, right? Don't say you can't come. The unnecessary comment about being not busy was typical, but I had already planned to go along, so it wasn't a problem. That's fine. Since I made the documents, I'll take responsibility if there's anything wrong. Hearing my words, Branch Manager Johnson beamed. Even if I hadn't said anything, he probably intended to shift all the blame onto me. But hearing me volunteer to take responsibility made him delighted. You've got it. If there's a mistake, it's all on you. Don't forget what you just said. And so, we headed to HQ. For those unfamiliar with this, the distance from Houston to New York might seem quite far. Indeed, it takes about 5 hours by bullet train, but less than 2 hours by plane. Considering transfers, it takes less than 3 hours to get to HQ in New York. We left Houston around noon and were in the HQ conference room by 4:00 p.m. The CEO was seated in front. Branch Manager Johnson sat across from the CEO and called to me. Hey, sit down quickly. We can't start if you're not ready. All right, I'll sit down then. I walked past Johnson and took a seat next to the CEO. What are you doing? This isn't a joke. Know your place. How dare you speak like that to the future CEO? Are you mocking his son? Branch Manager Johnson was stunned by the CEO's shocking words. What? What does that mean? It means exactly what it sounds like. Joseph Jones is my son. It hasn't been officially announced, but I plan to have him succeed me as the next CEO. Yes, I am the CEO's son. I was raised by a single mother. But the truth is, my mother was asked to disappear from my father's life by my paternal grandfather when he learned of her pregnancy before marriage. My father's family was well known, and they wanted him to marry someone from a distinguished family they had long been associated with. So my grandfather offered money to my mother to leave my father. My grandfather even went as far as to beg on his knees. So my mother moved away without contacting my father and refused to accept any money. This decision led to our life of poverty, but when I learned the truth, I felt proud of my mother. Had she taken the money and left, I might have hated her. My father, on the other hand, didn't know about my grandfather's actions and thought my mother had left him without a word. It wasn't until my grandfather was on his deathbed that he tearfully confessed the truth to my father. I'm sorry. I realize now I made a terrible mistake. After my mother left, my father remained unmarried, living a life of solitude. My grandfather had assumed my father would eventually marry someone else, but that never happened, leading to his deep regret. After my grandfather passed away, my father hired a detective and found me. That's how I, a high school graduate, got into this company. Of course, since my parents were never married, my father and I have different last names, and legally he isn't recognized as my father yet. But my father, feeling deeply apologetic, wanted to formally acknowledge me and establish a proper parent-child relationship. He also proposed that I take over his company. However, I thought that suddenly succeeding such a position without any experience would cause backlash. So I suggested that I work harder than anyone else until he retired and then be evaluated based on my performance. Though initially hesitant, my father agreed to my proposal. Subsequently, I was sent to various branches to learn everything about the company. I was to observe everything from a regular employee's perspective and report any improvements needed to the CEO. While it was my idea to be evaluated based on my work, my father saw how useful I was and worked me hard for 10 years. The mission at the Houston branch wasn't just about cost cutting. There were suspicions about financial discrepancies and the branch manager's potential misconduct. Unaware of this, Johnson had me create fake reports, which played right into my hands. When I explained all this to Johnson, he was speechless, but then tried to shift the blame onto me. You said you'd take responsibility if there were mistakes. You made the report, so you should take the blame. You remembered that, but unfortunately for you, I included the truth in the supplementary documents I was sent by the CEO to uncover your misconduct. The initial report was fake, and I said I would provide accurate documents later. Furthermore, when Johnson wasn't looking, I handed the correct documents to Richard on the plane, so I didn't report anything incorrect to the inspection team. Looking at the correct documents, the Houston branch's entertainment expenses are disproportionately high compared to other branches. My son has investigated all the expenses. You know what you spent it on, right? The CEO glared at Johnson, who immediately fell to his knees. I'm so sorry, but I only used a little. Please have mercy. A little? Once we calculate the amount, it will be huge. Using company money for personal use, even a little, is unacceptable. Using company funds without permission is embezzlement, a serious crime. If you can't repay the money, you could face a prison sentence. However, embezzlement charges typically require the company to file a complaint, so Johnson is hoping for leniency from the CEO. I'll repay all the money, just please don't file a complaint. If you do, I'll lose my job, and my family will abandon me. Seeing Johnson crying and begging was pitiful. Even now, he's worried about finding another job. Repaying such a large amount would surely reveal everything to his family, and even if it doesn't become a criminal case, they'd likely abandon him. Ultimately, he's only concerned about himself. Repaying the money is a given. You repay every cent. We will file a complaint. We must treat this as a criminal case to set an example for other employees. Branch manager Johnson listened to those words with a look of shock. Later, when we calculated the amount of money he had embezzled, it became clear that he could never repay it in his lifetime. Naturally, he couldn't repay the money, so he sold his house and exhausted all his savings. Yet, he still had enormous debts. Since he showed remorse and willingly surrendered all his assets, the court granted him a suspended sentence for the criminal charges. Although he avoided prison, his family abandoned him. His wife filed for divorce, and his 2 children disowned him. Even his parents disowned him, and all his relatives and friends turned away. He was left completely alone. He was, of course, terminated from the company and now has to find a new job. However, the rumor of his embezzlement spread quickly, making it nearly impossible for him to find employment. I've heard he's doing day labor at his age, involving physical labor and night shifts, which is taking a toll on his health. I've even heard stories from people who didn't recognize him due to how much he had deteriorated. It's entirely his own fault, so I don't feel any sympathy. However, I take it as a lesson to stay humble and not let being the future CEO go to my head. The Houston branch regained its former vitality after a new manager replaced Johnson. Now, the Houston branch has become a place everyone envies for transfers, so things should be stable for a while. I was called back to HQ after the chaos at the Houston branch was resolved. Having spent a long time working like a spy for the CEO, traveling between branches, I was highly evaluated by the CEO. He suggested we formalize our father-son relationship, feeling that I had genuinely contributed to the company with the Houston branch situation. I accepted the proposal. Thus, the CEO and I officially became father and son. At the same time, the CEO promoted me to the position of director. He also introduced me as his son to everyone, making it known that I am the next CEO. It seems I am truly going to become the CEO of this company. It's like a dream, and I still can't quite believe it. But for now, I want to give my all as director until the CEO retires. If I can contribute to the company's profit, the transition to CEO will naturally be accepted. I intend to make the most of each day until then.